Everyone. We're at the top of the hour, so I think we can go ahead and get started. I'm Kaylee Hansen with SVA Consulting, and joining me is Austin as well. So he's a customer success manager with us. And so I'll be walking through today's webinar, which will really be focused on the new 2025 R1 of Acumatica. So that's the most recent release that came out about a month ago now. So we'll walk through some of those new enhancements, new features to expect there. Before we dive into all the fun, a couple of housekeeping items. So if you're new here, welcome. And if you're returning to our webinar series, welcome back. If you have any questions that pop up during today's webinar, feel free to use the chat function. So Austin will be monitoring that, and then we'll address those questions either while we're going through, if it's relevant. Otherwise, we'll have a little bit more of a Q&A at the end. But with that, I think we can go ahead and get started. All right, so just taking a look at today's agenda, we have a lot kind of jam-packed into today, but we'll start by just orienting you around the upgrade overview process. So we'll take a look at the different versions, kind of the schedule of how long those versions last, and then what that upgrade process would look like, particularly with SVA for upgrading to a new version of Acumatica. So if you've been through this process before, it's a little bit of a good reminder for you. And then if you haven't, this will be a little bit of what to expect throughout that upgrade process. Then we'll get into the new feature highlights. So there's a lot of new features within each release of Acumatica, so we won't touch on every single one of them today, but we will provide resources for kind of drilling down into additional details, additional ones that we may have missed, but we'll try to get some of those big picture feature highlights that we've pulled. And then we'll go through kind of a live feature demo. So again, handpick a couple of items that we'll do in a live demo to see what that looks like, kind of more specific to a lot of the functionality that our customers may be using as well. And then, like I said, we'll wrap up with just a Q&A, any questions we didn't address throughout the session, and then some next steps. All right, so first we'll just recap a little bit of the upgrade resources and schedule. So as a reminder, Acumatica has two major upgrades per year. One in kind of the April timeframe, that's R1, which we'll be walking through today, and then another one in the October-November timeframe. So you'll expect that our October webinar will be all about 2025 R2. So the release notes are one of those resources that I just kind of alluded to, but there's about over 200 pages of release notes with all the new features, all the changes and enhancements that Acumatica has with this 2025 R1 release. So I do encourage you guys to go ahead and take a look at it. I provided the link here, but it can be found within the Acumatica community. And again, that will give you guys a good glimpse into what's all included, anything we may have missed today, and all of that good stuff. The other area that we always like to point our customers to are the product ideas. So also within the Acumatica community, you can go ahead and go into community.acumatica.com/ideas. And this is where users within Acumatica go ahead, post different ideas that they'd like to see roll out into future releases of the product. So if there's any functionality within Acumatica that you really wished you could have, you can go ahead, post your ideas, and then other users within the system upvote those. And then depending on how many votes they have, those are rolled into future releases of the product as well. So a lot of what we'll look at today, some of those could have stemmed from those product releases. So we definitely encourage our customers to be active within the community, post those ideas, because oftentimes you can't see those roll out into the future releases of the product. In between each major upgrade, there's different builds. So we talked about kind of the upgrade schedule. In between there's what are called builds every 2 to 8 weeks. So these are a little bit different. They're optional, very quick to deploy. And it would typically be things like a minor bug fix that Acumatica can go ahead and push into your environment. And then this is a little bit new from our last upgrade webinar that we went through, but Acumatica has a new feature that they've rolled out specific to customers like you, and it's called Acumatica Labs. So this can also be found within the community, but if you go to the community and then at the very top product, there's a link under the product for Acumatica Labs. And what it is essentially a program that customers can enroll in to get early access to some of the experimental features of the product. So if that's of interest to you, you'll see some of those experimental features that they have listed within that link if you go visit that page already. And then you can go ahead, kind of fill out that form. And it's a good resource if you want, again, to get early access to some of those features as well. So a little bit of a recap there, but some exciting new stuff that Acumatica is rolling out specific to that Acumatica Labs area. All right, so just a reminder on the product support lifecycle. So each support or each version is supported for a period of about 20 months before it's released. So this is just a little bit of a look on that timeline, which releases are currently supported, and then when that expected retirement is as well. So you'll see 25R1 at the very top was initially released late March, and then that expected retirement would be, the end of November of next year. All right.
I have one question, Kaylee, and that is this particular attendee heard that starting in June, the builds are no longer optional and will be deployed automatically, and it's to be determined as to whether or not they will impact any customizations. Do you have any additional details on that? If not, we can take that as a follow-up item.
Yeah, let's take that as a follow-up item. I believe there may be some changes on the build schedule and how those get deployed, but we'll kind of update that. And then if those changes would apply, obviously to our customers, we can kind of send out an announcement on how that may potentially impact you as well.
All right, thank you.
All right. So this will kind of recap just the upgrade process. So again, this may sound familiar if you've done the upgrade process before, but it's always a good reminder since, you're not doing it every month, for example. And then if you haven't seen this process before, we'll just kind of walk through what we typically see from an upgrade perspective. So if you're working with SVA in kind of rolling out these new upgrades, we kind of think of it as just a mini initiative where we start with a bit of a planning session. So here we can kind of go ahead, assemble the materials, assess the workload, et cetera. So what this would look at is, do you have any custom reports and inquiries in your system, any customizations within the system as well, any specific workflows or procedures that have been customized as well. So we kind of walk through that, do an evaluation of, what are the areas that we just have to pay attention when kind of rolling out this upgrade, and then we'll start to document those within the planning stage. Once we kind of go through the upgrade process, we'll kick off the sandbox creation. So what this is essentially a copy of your current production instance. We work with Acumatica, for creating this sandbox based on your timing. And so we'll go ahead, meet with them to create this sandbox environment, and that will be, on the new version. So production instance on that 25R1 in this case. And from there, there's kind of a 90-day countdown. So Acumatica offers that free sandbox for the upgrades for about 90 days. And that's where you can kind of test in and play around with before we kind of push it live. Then we'll get into tailored trainings. This can vary a bit depending on each customer. Obviously, we have this webinar as a good reference point, but any specific training that your team may need on specific areas. So we might say, okay, you're pretty heavy in the distribution, so let's walk through anything that's changed or been added to, the inventory module, for example. So we'll work with your team to do more tailored training specific to you for the new version as well. From there, we'll go to the pilot and acceptance. So this is where, we have kind of test scripts that we can run through, just make sure everything's working properly within that sandbox environment, kind of the end-to-end flows there. And then if you do have those customizations or any custom reports and generic inquiries, we would just make sure that that's tested as well, so we're comfortable to go live in the new version. And then, of course, that leads us up to go live. Again, if any customizations exist in your system, our team would assist in publishing those packages. And then it's important to note that kind of the users and the passwords and all of those credentialing are not impacted when upgraded. And I know there's a little bit of chat back and forth in the chat. Austin, anything that we need to pause and address at the moment?
I think we're good for now. Just a couple of questions that I was able to address directly, so I think we're good to keep on moving.
Perfect. All right. All right, so this is going to transition now into our features. So I have a different kind of page for each area within the system. We handpicked some main features and changes that we wanted to highlight within today's webinar. And so the first is around usability and AI. So the first is the new user interface. We talked about it last time. I think maybe even the release before we kind of mentioned it, but the new UI is starting to roll out a bit. And it kind of is available for turning it on and off in various areas within the system. So throughout the demo, we'll do a couple of main flows within the new UI. So it might look a little bit different. Hopefully you all see that it looks different in a good way. I definitely think that. So we'll kind of use my demo environment. We'll show a lot of those flows within the new UI. And I'll kind of point that out as we go through if it's not obvious. So we'll see that in action today. And then, as we all have heard everywhere, AI is everywhere in the world today. And so a lot of people have been asking, okay, what's Acumatica's plan for AI? So if you were in some of our previous webinars, you would see some additions that they've made already to AI within the system. So that exist within production today. So things like the AP document recognition. We'll talk about some enhancements that have been made on that end as well as the AI anomaly detection. So that was shown in, I believe, the last release webinar that we did. So I definitely encourage you guys to check that out if you haven't already, because that will give a good indication of, what types of AI tools exist within the system today. And then looking ahead, Acumatica has a pretty robust roadmap in terms of what they want to do and where they're going with their AI strategy. So any customers that had the privilege of joining the Acumatica Summit back in January saw a lot of these enhancements kind of firsthand, what Acumatica is working on to roll out shortly. And so those include areas like using AI as an intelligent advisor, more robust functionality in terms of AI-driven automation, as well as more of an interactive AI assistant. So you'll see a screenshot on the right-hand side of kind of what Acumatica has shown in one of their live demonstrations. So again, this isn't kind of rolled out within this initial release, but this is what we can expect from Acumatica on their AI strategy moving forward. So I also included that link to Acumatica's page, where they do include various live demos that they did from the Acumatica Summit of this functionality specifically. So I definitely encourage you guys to check that out if you're interested in how the future is changing, how you can start to use AI specific to Acumatica as well. And Austin, that's probably a link we could send in the chat if we wanted to. So that's easy access to you guys. I know you can't click it through my PowerPoint directly. All right, so now we'll go ahead and take a look at some of the new enhancements on the financial side. So the first is within Acumatica, there's now the ability to increase authorized payment amounts for credit card transactions. So a specific use case, we'll walk through this in the demonstration as well, but it would be, I have a sales order, maybe I'm pre-authorizing that card, or I have a prepayment on that card, but then my freight prices are changing a little bit after, and you want to kind of allow that authorization to have an increased payment amount on it. So we'll walk through that workflow, but within Acumatica's 25R1, it would allow that credit card that has been authorized to have an increased amount from the initial authorization for example, freight charges. So that's something that you could decide to turn on or off within the system, within a specific processing center. And then we'll kind of see that in play within the demonstration. But it is a little bit of a nice feature in terms of just those credit card transactions, especially if you have a high volume, potentially those prices are changing and you want to keep that authorization. The next is the ability to generate payment receipts for released transactions. So we'll see this in action as well. But I may have an invoice, I pay it, that payment has been released, and then someone asks, hey, can I have that payment receipt? What does that look like? So now within Acumatica, version, you can go ahead and email and print out those payment receipts even after that transaction has been released. So I'll walk through that example as well in demonstration. We can get a better feel for what that looks like. The next is the ability to add financial charges to refunds. So here's kind of a screenshot example of what that would look like. But within Acumatica, if I have a refund, and for example, I have maybe bank fee transactions or charges, I can go ahead and add those within the refund in that kind of AP bill refund. And we can go ahead and add those charges to it as well. So then you can take those into account when processing those refunds. The next one is an additional format for bank feeds. So this BAI2 format for bringing in those bank feeds. So I know we've talked about this a little bit before, but different options in terms of kind of easing that process for bank reconciliation. So we have, direct bank feeds or integrations into your bank accounts to bring in those specific transactions. We can have things connecting like an SFTP file or site, and then this new file format has been added within 25R1. So kind of just adding to the functionality here to help you guys streamline that process for connecting with your banks and bringing in those bank transactions for reconciliation. So some cool stuff coming. Again, we'll see those first two items in action in the demonstration portion of today's webinar. All right, moving a little bit into the distribution area. So within Acumatica's distribution, there's the ability to connect with weight scales from Device Hub to capture the weights of your items specifically for the packaging and shipment side. So this was a feature that's available within kind of that pick, pack, and ship workflow. Within 25R1, they've added additional areas where you can go ahead and capture those weights. So directly within the shipment screen, you can go ahead and press this capture weight button. Again, that will pull the weight from the Device Hub. And then also, if you're shopping for rates using the shipping carrier integrations within Acumatica, while that dialog pops up, you're shopping for rates, you can also capture the weight at that time. So additional areas within that flow that would allow you to capture those weights to kind of streamline that process specifically. The next that we wanted to highlight is the ability to correct or cancel purchase receipts for both normal and drop ship purchase orders. So we'll show this in the demonstration today as well. But think you're receiving an item, maybe you have a lot of item that you're receiving in, and you made a mistake on it, maybe release that transaction, and you want the ability to go ahead and correct that. So within 25R1, users can go ahead and correct or cancel those purchase receipts. So I'll take a look through that workflow and we'll see what that would look like as well. But really just kind of trying to streamline that process of, maybe I made a mistake. How do I correct that pretty quickly? Another feature we wanted to highlight that is specific, to some needs that we've seen for some of our customers is when using lot and serial attributes or lot and serial classes, rather, you can go ahead and assign attributes to those now. So previously, within previous versions of the product, there was not the ability to have lot and serial specific attributes. So now within 25R1, we can go ahead, create attributes within the system, the same attributes that you're used to working with today. Same process there, but we can go ahead and assign those to specific lot and serial classes. So tracking additional information on those lot and serial classes. So I'll also show that example. All right, and then the last one is the ability to create a transfer receipt when receiving and put away items within the mobile device. So this would be, more of the barcoding functionality, that receive and put away feature that you may be leveraging today on a handheld device or a mobile device. Now in 25R1, there's the ability to receive in a transfer receipt and track that directly through that device as well. So you'll see that new receive transfer button added within the handheld device. So there's a lot more on the distribution side, but some main areas that we wanted to highlight. And then again, we'll see some of those two middle items come into today's workflow in the demonstration portion. All right, switching a little bit to the manufacturing side now. So a lot of new enhancements on the manufacturing side, specifically around some of the interface and some of the views for the manufacturing side specifically. So one exciting new feature is a new inquiry view. So really, it's enhancing the production planning and material availability views within Acumatica. So this new inquiry added within 25R1 is called production orders by build capacity. And then you'll see things like conditional formatting being pulled in automatically, for how ready it is for the production. So ready, partially ready, not ready, again, based on some of those MRP functionality. The next is a new dashboard for enhanced production scheduling views. So it's called this work center planned utilization. And again, what it's looking at is just better planning and better views from a dashboarding perspective for that work center capacity as well. So kind of more on the visibility into data side on the inquiry views and the dashboard views. And then another main component that Acumatica has enhanced on the manufacturing side is relating to the scheduling board. So if you're using kind of the scheduling features within Acumatica's manufacturing edition today, we'll see that looks a little bit better within the new UI in 25R1 and some of their features that they have on their roadmap as well. So definitely taking strides to make that scheduling specifically look better, feel better, and then be a little bit more useful and easy to use for those users. On the construction and project side, so this is an area that we briefly talked about on the AI side, but Acumatica has the AP bill incoming documents. So that is one that we've highlighted a couple of times in our past webinars. So I definitely encourage you to check that out. But there's been enhancements to this screen for specifically for projects. So within Acumatica, you can kind of drag and drop those AP bills into the system, or you could have a designated email set up where all of those vendors send their bills, for example, and then the AI functionality will come into play to kind of read that PDF and put it into this entry screen. So now within Acumatica, you'll see there's additional functionality for projects. So I have the ability to link subcontracts directly within this incoming documents area. And what that allows is I can link subcontracts to this AP bill. And then on a line-by-line basis, depending on that link to the subcontract, it's automatically going to pull in that project information as well. So automatically providing the link between the subcontract, the AP bill, and then that project that it's corresponding with directly within this incoming document screen. The next is within specific documents in Acumatica, so things like AP bills, purchase orders, or subcontracts. Within 25R1, they've now added the ability to have kind of a multiple project selection. So previously, within a specific transaction, you'd be able to select a single project. Now, if you have a bill coming in and it applies to multiple projects, you do have the ability to select multiple projects within that AP bill, for example. So a nice function, especially if, receiving those types of documents, but then they could be applicable to multiple projects that you're working on. More on kind of the optimization side. So there's been an added side panel on the project side for better tracking of the project-specific inventory. So there's views added on the side panel. You'll see the current project inventory. And what that allows is, depending on the project that you're on, a side panel view into that project inventory and the position there as well. A lot more on the construction side. So definitely, if that is your industry, I would encourage you guys to look into the release notes, because there's a lot of functionality added specific to construction and specific to the project functionality. All right, we'll kind of wrap up the slides and then we'll get into the demo, because I know that's always a little bit more fun. But a couple of things added on the CRM side as well. So that's kind of leverage agnostic to maybe the edition of Acumatica you're in. But additional address settings and fields have been added for the ISO standards on a CRM side. So things like adding departments, subdepartments, street names, building numbers, etc., to those address fields within the CRM side of the system. And then there's been enhancements to the email activity types for case management calculations. So previously we'd have, system generated emails within Acumatica, as well as emails that you could potentially just track on an activity level. And so now there's specified activity types for system emails separate than general emails that you're tracking. And so what that allows is, taking into account those different activities on the case management side, maybe ignoring some of the system emails versus the emails back and forth with you and the customer. So a couple of different enhancements there on that activity side. All right. One last topic I'll just touch on briefly, and then we'll get into the demo, is on the integration side. So there's always kind of integration enhancements, things like Shopify and Amazon are ones that we're seeing make enhancements in in recent releases. And so within Acumatica, there is an Amazon integration. That's a little bit newer, but they're continuing to make enhancements to it. So now there's the ability to synchronize inbound shipments, really for inventory replenishment reasons on the Amazon fulfilled orders. So again, bringing in those inbound shipments into the system to kind of include within those inventory replenishment calculations as well. All right, so I know we walked through a lot in that slide deck, but now I'm going to transition into the demo. Hopefully this will be a little bit fun, and then we can see some of these come into play. So you should now be seeing Acumatica. Is that right? Looks like it. Right. All right, so we'll walk through kind of first touching on the finance side, some of those features that we walked through. So first we'll talk about kind of the payment side, so pre-authorizing and then authorizing a higher amount, for example. So we'll walk through a sales order workflow with that to start. And as I walk through this workflow, we're going to use the new UI. So I'm going to drill down into my sales order screen. And you'll see, as of right now, it's giving me a little pop-up that's saying, hey, the modern UI is turned on for this specific screen. So again, I can kind of turn it on a screen-by-screen basis within this release of Acumatica. And so this inquiry view, you'll see, is a little bit different with the new UI, but pretty standard in terms of what we would expect. Still looks like that inquiry view, still has the ability to kind of drag and drop columns, use all the filtering criteria, et cetera. If I go ahead and create a new sales order, this is where we'll start to see that new UI come into play as well. So I'm going to create a new sales order. We'll walk through those other functionalities, but you will get a chance to see what the new user interface starts to look like. And give it a minute to load. All right. So if you were on a previous webinar, I think you've seen this flash. We're going to use it a little bit more to flow, but this is what the new UI looks like. So a little bit different here, but I'm going to go ahead and walk through my sales order workflow for a specific customer. So in this case, I'll use this Clark Contractors, and then we'll go ahead and add in some items as well. So I'll add in 5 of these laptops and press save. And then this is where, maybe I have a prepayment coming in, or I'm authorizing this card. So I'm going to go ahead, use my credit card processor. And this is where within 25R1, we can kind of do that authorization and reauthorization of a different amount. And this flow I'll walk through will be specific to the freight cost. All right, so we'll authorize at this stage. Let that execute. All right, we're going to put in a new card number here. Execute, and then we'll see that now it's going to authorize my card. So here it is. It's pending processing. It's not fully processed and captured yet, but it's in that pre-authorization status. So now maybe it's ready to ship. I'm going to go ahead, add the freight cost, and then we want that card to ultimately be authorized and captured for that full amount. I'm going to go ahead and shop for rates. Add in my package here. My shipping coupons. So here, maybe I'll use FedEx 2-day. They want this pretty quickly. We'll save that. And then if I go back to my payments tab, I can go over here and say increase authorized amount. So remember, I can have this set up whether or not I want to allow this within the system. In this case, I do. So I'm going to go ahead, increase that authorized amount, and then it's automatically taking into account that freight charge. So that $23.53 was not authorized previously. I didn't know that freight cost at the time. Now I do, and it's automatically pulling in that authorized amount to include the freight. So we'll go ahead and increase this. And then I could go ahead, go through the rest of my workflow as well. So maybe I'll just quickly ship this product, we'll invoice it, we'll capture that payment then, and then we'll also take a look at the new feature within 25R1 that we could send out that payment receipt after that authorization or after that release. Right, we'll prepare this invoice. Your application from before, I'm going to go ahead and capture that. All right, now my status of my invoice itself has changed to balance. My prepayment has now been captured. I'll release this and this will kind of close it all out. And then let's say a customer calls me and says, hey, we paid this, but we can't maybe find the receipt for it. Can you go ahead and resend that payment receipt? So I can drill down into my payment. And now I have the option added to this screen to print the payment receipt or email it. So likely I'd be emailing this out to them. Once I do, it's automatically adding that activity at the top. And I'll drill down into this email activity, and this is what was sent up to the customer. So just as a quick refresher, all these email activities within Acumatica are using kind of a standard template, but they could be tailored to your needs as well. And then it's dynamically pulling in everything that it needs related to that payment receipt number, the email address it's sending to, et cetera. So here's the email that went out, and then automatically attached this payment receipt to that email as well. So just another feature added within 25R1. All right. Doesn't look like any questions came in the chat there, but those were some of those financial enhancements that we wanted to walk through. And now we'll walk through some of those distribution ones as well. So first, I'll go into my inventory module, and we'll first address kind of that lot and serial class attributes that have been added in 25R1. So I'll drill down into this. You'll see this is the typical UI, so it's a little bit different than that modern UI view. So as I kind of transfer back and forth, you'll get an idea for what they look like, the differences between them as well. But here within Acumatica, I have my lot and serial classes, so that exists today. But now if I drill down into my lot or serial class, I have an additional tab added for the attributes. So now within Acumatica, specific to that class, I can have additional attributes that I want to track within that lot itself. So in this case, I want to add, the color, the voltage, and in this case, just a checkbox on whether it passed an inspection test, perhaps. So different attributes can be added within the system and then added to these specific classes. And then those can go ahead and be tracked on that specific lot for the item as well. Kind of a nice feature, important one if leveraging this type of functionality in Acumatica. All right. next we'll walk through the corrections on the purchase order receipt side. So I'll walk through a purchase order process. Again, you're all likely familiar with the purchase order workflow in Acumatica today. But I'll just show it briefly. Again, we'll see it in the new UI, and then we'll focus specifically on correcting that purchase order receipt. So I'll go ahead, create a purchase order. In this case, you can create it for my Ulta Ace vendor, and then we'll just add in a couple of lines. So maybe we want to order, 50 of these laptops and maybe 100 headsets. So we'll go ahead and press save. And then this could obviously be routed for approval. In my case, it's not, but I'll just go ahead and release it. No approval on it in this sense. And then I'm going to go ahead and create the receipt. So let's say the product came in. Now I'm going to go ahead and create that purchase order receipt. And we'll see this pop up as well. All right, so we're going to assume in this case, we're receiving it in full. So maybe I'm on the receiving end. I say, hey, 50 of these came in and 100 of those came in. This looks great. I'm going to go ahead and release it. Maybe 2 minutes pass and I realize, oh shoot, I didn't have my coffee today, and I counted those headsets wrong. So now I have to go ahead and make a correction. So now within 24-hour-1, there's additional action items here for creating those corrections. So let me go back here into my purchase receipt. Let me new tab this here. I may have this in my other environment. So let me transition a bit here. Let this screen load. All right, so we'll kind of walk through that process again. Same thing. Add my items quickly. Receipt again. And so now I'm receiving it in full, release it. And then I realized I made a mistake. Again, maybe I made 2 mistakes in one day. All right, and so now I have these added options here for correcting the receipt or canceling the receipt. So let's just say, all right, I'm going to make a correction to this. I went back, I counted, and I actually had, 98 of these and 49 of these. So maybe whoever was counting on the vendor side didn't do a very good job either, but so I go ahead, make those changes. So I'm going to correct it. So what that did was just pop open the same screen essentially with the same values that I had in my original receipt, but then it allows me to go ahead and correct it. So I go change those values and then I can release this and we'll see where some of this linkage comes back into play. So now if I go into my others tab, you'll see it's automatically creating a link to my original document. And then if I click open that original document, it's telling me, hey, the current document has been corrected. So there was a correcting receipt made. That was the one I just was open on. And then this status on the purchase receipt, that was the original receipt, automatically canceled. So in that corrective action, it created that correcting receipt while simultaneously canceling that other one once that corrected one was received. Or release rather. And so if I go into the other tab on the original receipt, there I have reference back to the correction as well. So kind of streamlining that process of correcting it. If you're making mistakes, obviously mine was a little bit lower volume, but if you're having multiple lines within a receipt with multiple different quantities, obviously mistakes are bound to happen. So that correction process just eases that a little bit in terms of making those fixes. All right. So we won't have time to dive into everything today in the demo portion. So I'm going to kind of end the screen share on Acumatica now, and we'll transition back into the slide deck. But a lot of new features. Hopefully we walked through some that excite you a little bit. Hopefully the demo was a bit interactive, exciting for you, and you want to try those new features out. So obviously we would encourage you to do so. We have those release notes listed, as well as those other materials within the Acumatica community. So definitely encourage you guys to check those out. We do have some contact information on the left-hand side. So if you guys are interested in upgrading, you want to kind of start that process, feel free to reach out to us. Austin is a very good contact there. He can kind of facilitate next steps. You can also reach out to us through that contact email. And then we do have another webinar coming up in May. So on May 21st, it will be off the topic of the upgrade, but onto a new fun topic as well. So we'll take a look at some of the data analysis tools in Acumatica. We did do a webinar specific to this a little while ago. A lot of you guys said it was a great webinar that you wanted to learn more about. So what we'll do in that is really just dive into some of those analysis tools, talk about dashboards, talk about inquiries, reports, the different uses of those, and how we can start to tailor those as well. So if that's of interest to you, you can scan that QR code and sign up. And then we reference a couple other areas that we did in previous webinars. So those can be found both within our website or within YouTube under SVA Consulting and then Acumatica webinars. So I know that was a lot jam-packed into about 45 minutes, but I appreciate you guys all showing up. And if you have any additional questions, feel free to reach out to Austin or myself directly as well. All right, with that, I think we can wrap up. Thank you, guys.
Thank you all.